Graham, or commonly known as Gus, is the CEO of the East Gippsland Catchment Management Authority. He's also one of the directors on the Victorian Fisheries Authority, and also a very passionate and highly skilled angler in his own right. So Gus is going to explain the healthy catchments and healthy fisheries, which I think we all understand is very important.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks everybody for coming today. It's a pleasure to see so many people to the first Dusky Symposium. I was pretty impressed to know the numbers of people who are interested in Dusky Flathead. And I'm no different. I mean, Gus is my name, as Craig said, and I'm a fisherman. I've been a fisherman my whole life. That's the way I sort of think about myself. And I look around the room and I think a lot of people here would think about themselves the same way. They just love fish and love fishing, and that's why they're here. That's why I'm here. I'm also here to brag about some fish I've caught, so of course it's an appeal for all fishermen to show off. I'm a board director of the Victorian Fisheries Authority with some other board directors here today, and I'm interested in being on the board because of that passion for fishing. And I've got some skills to help at the board level, but it's the passion that really I bring. And also I'm the CEO of the East Gippsland Catchment Management Authority, and there's 10 of those around the state. They're state government authorities, just like the VFA is, but their role is to look after the rivers and to maintain the health of the rivers. So that's one of the main roles, and the other role is to help people to work together to do that. So there's a lot of our work is about creating partnerships. Now back to the fishing. My first exposure to flathead was when I was a kid, about 10 years old. My dad took me out on the bay, and I know they're sand flatties, not duskies, but that was the first experience I'd ever had with flatties. And we caught 82 fish that day, and we kept every one of them. And I can remember in the garage at home, you know, filleting all those 82 flatties and eating them. And that was, you know, now for me, that's 40 years ago. So that's sort of where we were at, I think, or where I was at about 42 years ago. I was being taught, catch them, get stuck into them, bring them home. I still bring a few home, but I hope at the end of the presentation you might see a little bit of difference in my behaviours. We'll see how we go. So who's clicking the slide? Is it me or? It's me? Righto. That's the Tambo River near Bruthen. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about why do we do this catchment work? So why do we look after rivers? So the picture down in the left-hand bottom, that's a Tambo before 1998. Now you might not see it clearly, but I'll describe it. It's got a lot of sand visible on the edges of the river, and it's got virtually no trees on the river banks. And the cattle had access right to the edge of the river. And what that did, and what our history has done, is perhaps created a few impacts that we didn't imagine. So without the trees along the edge, with our cattle getting access straight into the rivers, with things like willows and invasive weeds sort of taking over those rivers, we ended up with a few problems. Now, one of the problems that Tambo has is there's a lot of sand that's been washed down into the Tambo River. We call it a sand slug, and that sand slug is just a result of us over-clearing basically and grazing a bit too far to the edge of the river. So a lot of our work's not overly complicated. What we're doing is just reversing a bit of it, just compromising a bit. So we're getting a few trees back along the river edges and fencing the cattle out so the cattle don't drink and poop and do all that stuff straight in the river. And in a period of time, you can see a river start to respond and start to come good. So the Tambo now, if you go to Bruthen, when you go there, you'll see it fenced on either side. You'll see quite a lot of native trees there. You won't see any cows in the river, and you'll start to see that river starting to heal a bit. Oh, how did that picture get there? Hey, who did that? Hey, there's some form of mistake. Everyone wants to catch a metre-long flatty. I'm no different. I don't know if there's any fisherman who wouldn't like a metre-long flatty, a metre-long barramundi. You know, we've got all these things we want to do in our lives. I haven't got there yet. That fish is 98 centimetres. I was thinking of rolling it out, you know, pressing it out and but I didn't get there. That was caught in Lake Tyers a few years ago on a lure that Bushy made, and I've known Bushy a long time. He's an absolute innovator in fishing, and the things he's sort of brought to the fishing industry, I think, are understated. He's really is a real gun, and so anyway, that's my best one to date. Not yet a metre. Yeah, mate, you bought it. Yeah. Back to the works. So I want to talk a little bit about the sort of works that occur. So that one's the Genoa River. I've just realised how you can make this thing sort of bump now by banging your foot. So I'll try not to do that. So the Genoa River, the first picture in the corner is back to that sand slug that's all the way down the Genoa, or was at the time. That was back in 1989 that shot was taken. Now, through very simple techniques, just work with landholders, fence off the river for a start. So a lot of our works are working with people who are farming alongside a river, and just voluntarily farmers are coming on board with fencing off the edge of the river. Then the next step is to address all the weeds. So we've brought in willows, we've brought in thistles, blackberries, all those sorts of weeds, which are not real good for a river. And so the next step is just address the weed control. The step after that is start to get some trees planted. Simple stuff like plant a few sort of wattles, plant a few sort of native bushes and trees. The Genoa there's also got quite a lot of large wood that's been put back in the river. So under that sand there's heaps of logs, like whole trees that we've put piles in the river and attached the trees. So we've created some structure inside the Genoa River again. Now it all sounds easy. The picture's 2009 and you can see it's fenced off, all the vegetation's in place. But the reality is that when we had a go at it the first time, we got a flood, washed the lot out. And then we had another go, did it again, next flood, washed the lot out. And so there can be, when you look at this sort of work, there can be a few disappointments along the way that you didn't really expect or want. And to the farmers' credit, they have kept standing up and saying, yep, let's put the fence back up, let's have another go. And then eventually we got a bit of a break on the Genoa, and that's what we created. It's nearly 100% fenced, and the sand that's been pouring down that river for many, many years now has started to slow up. So we're starting to get the gains that we want for our estuaries for the Duskies. Oh, look, there's another one. Right? So that one's a Genoa River fish, and probably about 5 years ago. And there's places in the top part of Malakuta Estuary, which Bushy knows well, which they're really starting to respond with the environmental works. Then if you add environmental works and good fisheries management, you can end up with a good result. I'll keep going. That's the Snowy. So for the Snowy, it's virtually the same problem. Large amounts of sand coming down a river that doesn't have any fenced off areas. That's where we were at in 98. There's one little difference on the Snowy, which is also it's in a bit of flow trouble. So when we did the Snowy scheme, which is a great scheme and fantastic for Australia, we took half the flows of the Snowy River and dammed them up in the Snowy scheme. So one of the things we do now with rivers, we've sort of learnt that we've got to let a bit of natural flow go back down the rivers. So now we're creating these things called environmental water or environmental flows. And basically what we're trying to do is there's an entitlement for water that the environment gets, and we run it down the rivers at the ideal times. We try and do it for things like fish spawning, or to get frogs and critters going on the side of the river, or give the wetlands a bit of a boost. So there's all sorts of reasons where we deliberately run a flow down a river, and the Snowy's one of those. So we strike a deal with Snowy Hydro, and we get little snippets of flow, and then we put a couple of big high flows down in the spring to try and help the fish spawning. So there's some environmental works that actually are trying to help get a good fishing outcome as well as a healthy environmental outcome. So that's one of the things we talk about now with environmental flows. don't just run the water down the river just for the environment. Try and get a couple of other kicks along the way. So try and help fish spawning to get more fish, which helps recreational anglers, but also helps the economy. So try and get what we can out of an environmental flow. So the Snowy's got some of those flows, the Latrobe River's got flows that we put down it from time to time, and we're starting to see some results, but we're really just learning. The Snowy's now 100% fenced voluntarily from Marlow to the hills. So all the farmers on the Snowy have got on board and voluntarily fenced off the Snowy River. That's about 40 kilometres of river length, and it's all revegetated. It's got weed control in there. We've got Aboriginal crews who work on the river. So it takes a bit of time, bit of grinding work, but you can get it done. The Snowy's an example where we got it on a good path. Canreel River's the same. Canreel River's now 100% fenced on the bottom reach, from the hills down to where the freehold land finishes below the highway. So the farmers have, again, voluntarily fenced it off. Same difficulties. That shot of Can in 1969, people were trying all sorts of things to get the river back in good shape. They put fences up. We had cars. People were using cars to try and hold it all together. Car bodies, yeah, old car bodies, all sorts of stuff we were trying to do to hold the can together. But what we've learnt is just simply partially reverse some of the things we did to cause the problems, fence it off, do the weeds, plant some trees, and keep at it. And that's what we've done. I wanted to talk about the how do you make it sustainable, and really it's about long-term partnerships. That's the other part of the CMA's role, is getting as many people as we can to work together on a common aim. And so there's partnerships with angling clubs, there's Aboriginal corporations, there's landholders individually, land care groups you would have heard of, friends of groups, you name it. There's multiple groups now who are working on the catchments of our lakes and our rivers to try and get them back into good shape, and we're starting to get some gains. So I'm pretty proud of the way this community has jumped on board with these long-term tasks. And it's happening in other areas around the state as well. So I just wanted to finish. Oh, look at that. There's another one. How did that happen? I'll explain the point of that one in a minute. So the key to success is multiple partnerships when you're working with catchments. People, individuals all working together on a common aim. Everyone can help, like good behaviours help. Like what was talked about before about, encouraging people not to toss litter on the side of the banks and all that. So simple stuff that can actually help keep everything in good shape. Handling your fish properly is another thing we can do to help the environment, because a fish is there for a recreational purpose or a commercial purpose, but we just want to keep them there, so try and handle them as well as you can. And be responsible. And my message here is that flatty was 82 centimetres long, but he was released she was released properly. She's going to swim around again. Who knows, might even still be there. So the message is, when I was 10, I caught 82 flatties and ate them all. And now that I'm 50, that one was 82 centimetres long, but it's still alive. I just think there's a change at foot. It doesn't mean you can't keep a feed, and I keep a feed too. I love fish, but our behaviours are shifting, and if they keep shifting along the right pathway, I think we've got a pretty bright future. So thank you. Yeah.